portion, I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of our presentation. It feeds off of, what Mike is also sharing with the schools, but it has additional slides in here to describe why the presentation is set up the way that it's set up. I originally put this presentation together after I graduated from a Master's of Public Health at George Washington University, and kind of learned a little bit about evidence-based theory, and my thesis and my focus was really on drug prevention education. I was really into harm reduction stuff too. Just dealing with either drug prevention or drug using populations is something I'm really passionate about after losing my brother. But I created an evidence base around what the program would be. So I based it on the health belief model, which I'll get into. But this is the title slide that we kind of introduce at the beginning of every presentation. So as kids are taking their seats, we ask them to take out their cell phones and scan a little QR code up on the screen, which will take them to that pre-survey. It's also linked with the post-survey so that we know that the same student is filling out the pre and the post survey. And then I do the quarterly evaluations, just measuring the lift in perceived knowledge scores about fentanyl and counterfeit pills, the dangers, and some other factors based on this health belief model. So theory-informed programming is a buzzword for educators. It's a buzzword for funders. It's a buzzword for coalitions. It just makes it easier to work with other people, I feel like. Knowing that there's a basis and a plan and a roadmap for what you're trying to accomplish. So we're going into schools, we're presenting something with the goal of changing behavior. We're not going in just to tell our stories, but we do want to change behavior. So we do that. The health belief model has been a theory-based behavior change model that's been implemented for drug prevention programs successfully. So it already has an evidence base behind it. I paired our curriculum to be based on hitting all of these tenets. So we address the perceived benefits of carrying naloxone or having naloxone available, the perceived barriers to accessing and administering naloxone, the perceived threat or perceived severity and susceptibility of witnessing or experiencing a drug overdose, or being a victim or witnessing an overdose from or poisoning from fentanyl. And then we go over self-efficacy or confidence levels, pre and post, of students' ability to both recognize the signs of a drug overdose and then be able to respond appropriately to help save a life. And then hopefully giving them cues to action on when to take action when they do see those signs in their community or at home, so that they can engage in more health promoting behaviors, ways to either save a life or avoid fentanyl or be a positive advocate for this messaging in their communities.
Well, another huge hurdle I face here with the denial and the resistance is those people who are responsible for public health and public safety have continued to place one barrier after another in front of naloxone access. Our health department doesn't want to distribute Narcan. The hospital board didn't want to let the health department distribute Narcan. The city manager doesn't want it distributed on city property.
Stupid. Where are you located, Laura?
El Dorado Springs, Missouri. We have more cows than people in my county.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's something I got to look into.
I mean, they have this imaginary liability risk, and what the city manager told me most recently, the reason they don't want it distributed at the community center is because they're afraid 11-year-olds will get a hold of it. So, I sent him a story about the 13-year-old who took 1,500 pills to school, the 10 and 14-year-old who died in Maryland. I said, we want 11-year-olds to get a hold of it.
Yeah. And there's also no correlation between accessibility and use. So that's been disproven. There's lots of articles and evidence to support that too, that making naloxone available to widespread people, not just health professionals or first responders, does save lives in communities. It does not increase drug use. drug users do not want to use naloxone. They want to have it in case they have a friend or someone that they use with die in front of them, but they don't want to actually reverse themselves. It totally ruins their high and sends them into terrible withdrawal, and then they've wasted $50. So it's not like drug using populations want to be reversed. So that's.
I've tried to impress upon them that the real liability risk they face is if someone dies and someone was with them but didn't have Narcan because they had blocked access to it.
Yeah.
That is a far more realistic risk to them than, somebody might use it wrong, or what happens if an 11-year-old gets a hold of it? Well, what might happen is they might get a wet nose, or they might save a life, or their life might be saved.
I just got a note from Bob Kiesling. He says that these are important questions. Can we do them at the end? Only because Jack's got to get through this.
We'll have time at the end for more questions or discussion on this.
I hope. Please don't think I'm rude on that. I'm just passing on.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
No,
thanks.
So the tenets of this program. This is just some of the results from our previous quarterly analysis. Was the biggest changes that we really address, and the gaps that we address in knowledge, is reducing the barriers to naloxone. We really highlight community resources of naloxone, how you can get naloxone, both mail order, online, local resources. We highlight local coalitions that provide training, all that stuff. So we see over 30% reduction across different demographics, different areas that we present this presentation to. We also see major increases in self-efficacies or confidence levels to respond to an overdose and to recognize the signs of an overdose. And then also, perceived knowledge about fentanyl and counterfeit pills increases by almost 25%. Plus, most of the students report that they have an increased motivation to share what they've learned, which is a big thing, because we know that students can act as great community educators as well, bringing this home to their families. We always get great feedback from our assemblies, superintendents claiming this is the best presentation they've seen in all 50 years that they've been in education, parents of students saying the students are coming home and discussing topics that they've never discussed before around the dinner table. And after they've discussed what they learned through our assembly, they go on and are talking with their friends about it all night. Teachers thanking us, just recognizing that the kids are crying. Kids saying that this isn't a typical presentation, it's more relatable. It's not just like don't smoke cigarettes or vape presentation that they're used to getting. And they recognize students are really vulnerable during this. They're crying. That just doesn't really happen with most of the presentations that they get. So we start every presentation by asking the students how many people they think are dying every single day in this country from overdose, mostly driven by fentanyl poisoning. And students will shout out numbers, and we'll play this video, which points out that we lost 279 Americans every day in 2023 to fentanyl poisoning, drug overdose mainly driven by fentanyl poisoning. So we usually put that in perspective. That's probably enough people dying every day to wipe out any school population in less than a week. So to put that in perspective, we introduce who we are. Our mission is really to establish a world where kids aren't dying from fentanyl poisoning by educating, sharing our stories on effective overdose response measures and raising awareness about the dangers of fentanyl and counterfeit pills. Why do we do it? Ultimately do it to save lives. We often say we don't know anybody in the audience, but we know that everybody has hopes, dreams, ambitions. We want people to be able to make mistakes and learn from them. This is just a mistake that will take your life and won't allow you to make the rest of the mistakes that you can learn from throughout your life. So we just want to remove one barrier to living a happy, healthy life from these students, make them aware of fentanyl. We then start off with the movie Dead on Arrival. We have a 14-minute version of this video and a 10-minute version, which is more for diverse audiences, has more diverse families represented. But this Dead on Arrival movie highlights 4 testimonies from different families who have all lost loved ones from fentanyl poisoning. I think it's great that 2 of the examples had no history of any substance use. 2 did have a history of substance use, just showing that, first-time users and drug-using populations are both being impacted. My brother was used substances, but there are so many kids who are dying just from first-time use. Then we go into our testimony. This is just some of our presenters here in Michigan. Bob, who's on this call, just did a presentation with us last week or the week before, Bob. Brighton, and did a great job telling the story of Caleb and Kyler. And the recommended format that we usually do for these testimonies is about 5 minutes. So the video is about 14 minutes. The intros may be 5 minutes. So that eats up about 19 minutes on the front end of this presentation. 5 minutes takes us to about 25 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. And then that leaves about 15 minutes for the education and the resource section at the back end of the presentation to land the plane in 45 minutes, which is a normal school period. So we want to make it easy for schools to schedule us during a homeroom or just a normal class period, which is why we try and get this presentation done in 14 minutes. So a recommended format for the testimony, and I'm going to provide a testimonial worksheet of the way that we recommend formulating your testimony, is I usually will tell people who my brother is. We were born 16 months apart in Rochester, Michigan. I'll say that if I'm in Michigan. If I'm down in Florida, I'll say that he died in Plantation, Florida, just outside of Fort Lauderdale. Lived down there at the time of his passing. Just so that the students who are sitting in the seats are relating to his story a little bit more, their ears perk up a little bit more. Drew was my best friend. He was athletic, played sports. He had such a high IQ. He woke up hungover and aced his ACT. I think he scored a 32, and it's out of 36 points. Versus I had to take an ACT prep course twice, and I scored a 27. So things just came really easy for him. He was a state champion swimmer, but he ended up getting a sports injury, got his first prescription for Percocet from his doctor, and then struggled with a substance use disorder for 2 years in silence without telling anybody. Tried to run away from it, tried to get clean, couldn't on his own, asked for help, got sober down in Florida, and then eventually relapsed one day at a rave, got a unprescribed pill from a roommate that he was living with in his sober living home, and was apartment shopping with his friend when his friend noticed those signs of a drug overdose that then we're going to address later on in the presentation. But he was nodding out, falling asleep. He wasn't acting right. So his roommate, his friend, thought that he just needed to sleep it off and dropped him off at his sober living home to sleep it off. Drew gave him the thumbs up as he was stumbling into his sober living home, and nobody heard from him for 24 hours until I got a call from his friend Erwin 24 hours later that Drew is dead. And I had to call both of my parents and stay on the phone with my aunt as she described that Drew was being wheeled out on a gurney in a body bag. And, the wailing from my dad, from my mom, just having to inform them of this is something that I want to spare every kid from ever doing. I also talk about, he was a big piece of my identity, and just kind of figuring out who I am in the world has been a real struggle without this guy. So, but it's meaningful sharing his story in front of student audiences and hopefully not having my tragedy become their tragedy. We introduced a young lady named Rain during the presentation who she's describing to her freshman and high school classmates about the dangers of fentanyl and controlled substances. And 1 month after making that video, she died from fentanyl poisoning. So we say, how can this happen? Well, in Rain's situation, she actually was at a pool party, and her friend offered her a Xanax, which the last Google search on Rain's phone was, what does a real Xanax look like? And the Xanax that was on the screen looked identical to the Xanax that was in her hand. That Xanax had enough fentanyl to kill a few people, and several lethal doses of fentanyl, and she died because of it. But it's to highlight that just sharing this education, we still need to not think that we're smarter than this, not think that this isn't happening to everyday people who may even have knowledge of the dangers of fentanyl. So we just can't trust these counterfeit pills that are out there, especially. So the impact we talk about last year, well, in 2024, we'll have to update these numbers when they come out in April for 2025. But just over 80,000 Americans lost their life to overdose. It used to be 107,000. I think that's on the next slide. Yeah, in 2023. So it has gone down, but it's still more than all the Americans who lost their life from the Vietnam War, childhood cancer deaths, COVID deaths under the age of 30. All Americans lost their life during the 9/11 attack, and drunk driving deaths, all totaled up, still total less than the number of lives lost to overdose. 70% of that is from fentanyl, and fentanyl is the number one cause of death for Americans 18 to 45. Full stop. It's slaughtering Americans. What does that look like? We show pictures of stadiums. I update this based on the area and the state so that they're relevant stadiums. The Big House in Michigan, or Comerica Park and Little Caesars Arena here in Michigan. We highlight famous people who have died from fentanyl, and then we go into the education portion. So we share our testimonies not just to eulogize our loved ones, but also really to grab their attention so that these kids can hopefully gain some knowledge that they won't make this their story. So we want to raise awareness about the dangers of fentanyl, signs and symptoms of overdose, what naloxone is, Narcan is. I'll ask, who's heard of naloxone? A few hands go up. How many have heard of Narcan? More hands go up. Okay, Narcan is the brand name. Naloxone is the generic name. You'll hear both kind of used during this presentation, but it's the same life-saving medication that reverses a drug overdose from opioids like fentanyl. And then we also want to connect people with important community resources. So we go through the numbers. Back in 1999, lost just under 20,000 Americans. In 2023, we lost 105,000 Americans to drug overdose, mainly from fentanyl. Why do we talk to adolescents? Because there was a 114% increase in overdose deaths in this population. 2/3 of those deaths had a bystander present, meaning a parent or a sibling in the next room while they were passing away. Only 35% had any history of opioid use, but 90% of them are dying from opioids. So this tells me like a lot of these kids are dying from first-time use or have no idea the substance that they're taking. So they're being poisoned. And about a quarter of all those deaths in the adolescent age group have evidence of counterfeit pill use. So then we go into what are counterfeit pills. Mass produced by criminal drug networks, often sold on social media, containing fentanyl or methamphetamine, and they're just widely available to anybody with a smartphone. I like to say, there's this 13-year-old boy in Colorado who had a wisdom tooth extraction who ran out of the few pills that he got from his dentist, and his friend said, I have a Percocet, and the boy was playing video games, had his video game headset on, talking to his friend. His friend said, I'll have it DoorDashed or, Ubered to your house. And the 13-year-old just ran downstairs, grabbed the pill from his front door, ran back up and put his headset on and was playing video games with his friend. And his parents found him two hours later dead in his beanbag chair. So that's one example of thousands of, people who are losing their life and getting tricked to take these counterfeit pills. 5 out of every 10 pills contain a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl that are being seized and tested from the DEA labs in this country. This is a potentially lethal dose. Examples of counterfeit pills, I'll ask, what are some differences you notice from the left and the right? The authentics being on the left and the counterfeits on the right. And for that middle example of Xanax, kids will say the color, the shape, the size. All of these things can be explained away by a drug dealer, like I could only get the yellow ones, the manufacturer changed, or this is the generic version of the drug. You just can't trust what anybody's trying to sell you online. If you don't get a prescription that has your name on it and is written by your doctor, then you got to assume that it's going to kill you. It's like a coin toss every time. So you can only trust if you're struggling with something, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you've been on an anxiety medication or a medication in the past, you don't need to struggle in silence. You don't need to struggle alone. We want you to talk to a trusted adult, talk to a friend, talk to a counselor, talk to your doctor about starting a medication again. And people are here to help you. We're here really to help each other. So not only is fentanyl being added to counterfeit pills, but it's also being added to street drug supplies like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, powdered drug supplies. And fentanyl is 50 to 100 times stronger than any other drug out there. What is an opioid overdose? So opioid receptors in the brain. Opioid binds to those receptors and shuts off our body's ability to breathe when an overdose occurs. Naloxone is effective on every opioid out there, including fentanyl and heroin and every drug that could be prescribed in between. And how it works is those receptor sites actually have a stronger affinity for the naloxone molecule. We teach the kids it's really important that they know that it only lasts for about 30 to 90 minutes versus a lot of opioids can last for 12 hours. Methadone actually has a half-life of 72 hours. So some of these opioids will be lingering in the body for a very, very long time. So it's important anytime that they give naloxone or Narcan that they have more of that on the way, or EMS is on the way to help administer more if it's needed. But it essentially creates a protective barrier, not allowing those opioids to rebound to the receptor sites in the brain, and then it restores the signals from the brains to the lung to breathe again. So works on any opioid anytime, can't cause a sudden withdrawal. It has no psychoactive effects. It's non-addictive. It's routinely used by EMS and police, fire, safety, ambulances. So it's safe and effective to use. It's safe for an infant, it's safe for an elderly person, it's safe for me, it's safe for you. You cannot overdose on naloxone, and it will have no effect on an individual if an opioid isn't present, which means you don't have to be a medical professional to give this. If you've ever used a nasal spray, like Flonase or saline spray, you can use this medication. If you suspect that somebody may be overdosing, then give this medication. You could save a life. If they're not experiencing an opioid overdose, then nothing will happen. So then we go through signs and symptoms of opioid use versus overdose. Opioid use, if I'm giving a full presentation on my own, I'll relate it back to the symptoms my brother was exhibiting to his friend. He was nodding out, he was falling asleep, but he was still responsive to his name. He had pinpoint pupils. His pupils were very small. His speech was a little bit slurred, and his friend just thought maybe these are signs that he should just sleep something off. But some of these can be explained away, like maybe, my brother's friend Rico thought that Drew was tired, but I needed to sleep something off. But a hallmark sign of opioid use is the pinpoint pupils. So it's normal for our pupils to react to light. When we go into the bright outdoors, our pupils are going to get small, but just to protect the back of the eye from too much light exposure, when we go into a dark lit room, the pupils are going to get big to allow more light to hit the back of the eye. But when we're on an opioid, our pupils are going to get small, and they're going to stay small no matter what the light exposure. So drugs are going to have an effect on these pupil changes. Now, opioid overdose, you're going to notice those pinpoint pupils But now the person is not going to be responsive to their name or you shaking them on the shoulder. They're going to be unconscious and not responsive. That's your first sign. This could be an opioid overdose. We know that it affects the breathing centers in the brain. So you're going to notice shallow breathing or no breathing at all. Because no oxygen circulating in the body, you'll notice skin color changes. Usually in the thinner skin areas like the fingernails and the lips first, they're going to turn purple or bluish. In lighter skin folks and darker skin folks, it's going to be a gray or ashen appearance. And then you may also hear snoring or gurgling noises. This is the body's reflex of saying the lungs aren't doing their job. I'm not getting oxygen. It's not actually the person breathing, which some people think maybe they're breathing, but they're not. So then we go through steps to save a life. You're going to shake the person's shoulder, shout their name to differentiate between opioid overdose and opioid use. So if they're not responding to their name, first thing that you're going to do, call 911. Now I say there are a few reasons for this. Number one, that dispatcher is going to be able to walk you through life-saving measures if the person is not responding and you don't have naloxone on site. They're also going to be able to get more of that naloxone on the way if you do have naloxone to give the person who's overdosed. But this also enacts the Good Samaritan law, which we update whichever state we speak in. But here in Michigan, the Good Samaritan law has really great protections for people who do everything in their power to save a person who is experiencing an overdose and maybe dying, and they're trying to save their life. So it protects them not only from being sued by cracking a rib or causing bodily harm if they're trying to perform CPR, but it also protects them from minor drug possession charges and drug paraphernalia charges. So if I am using an illegal substance and because I suspect my friend is overdosed, I will not be held responsible or charged for the drugs that are on my person in the area or in my system. That protection extends not only to me, but also the person who has experienced the overdose. So if you're at a party and you suspect somebody is overdosed, call 911. The cops will show up. They'll confiscate the drugs. They'll get rid of them. But you will not be held responsible, and neither will the person who is overdosed. This law was put into place to prioritize saving lives, and because people were sick of having people go into ambulance bays and just drop off their friends, or leaving people in a Target bathroom, which happened to my brother as well. So after you've called 911, you are going to get out your first dose of nasal naloxone. It comes in a blister pack. I usually have a trainer device that I bring to my presentations, but we've done presentations without that as well. It works the same as a Flonase or a nasal spray. You're just going to push the nozzle end all the way into the person's nostril, all the way up to your fingertips, and then you're going to push the plunger on the bottom. You're going to feel the full medication administered into the person's nose, and then you're going to wait and see if the person is responding or breathing. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes for that medication to be absorbed by the nose and circulate up to the brain. So you're going to stay with that person, stay on the phone with that dispatcher, that 911 dispatcher, who could walk you through how to perform CPR or provide rescue breathing. After 2 minutes, if the person's still not breathing, you're going to take out a second dose. They come in doses of 2. You're going to put it in the opposite nostril this time in case there was a blockage or an obstruction in the first nostril, and then administer that second dose the same way that you did the first time. You can do this as many times as you need to, or for as many doses as you have, until the person starts breathing again or comes to. Now, this is known as the Lazarus drug because somebody will go from seeming like they're dead on the ground, blue and pale in front of you, to fully alert, awake, and wondering where the heck they are. So if anybody's ever woken up from a nap, they don't know what day it is, what year it is, what their name is. We ask for a show of hands from kids on that. A lot of them are like, yeah, that happened to me this morning. Well, this is kind of the same thing, except now you're waking up and you've got people standing over you and there are sirens in the background. So it's important to just put that person on their left side, the recovery position, because sometimes they can go into an active withdrawal, which includes vomiting. And you want to prevent that vomit from going back into their airway. So you'll place them on their left-hand side in the recovery position, let them know that they've had a medical event, you gave them some medication and help is on the way. And then just give them some space because you don't know how they're going to respond. But you'll have ultimately saved a life at that point. Important community resources we always like to highlight are low barrier access to naloxone. Here in Oakland County and in the Wayne County area, Detroit public school area, we have Wayne Wellness Stations and these Save a Life stations. They're like porch boxes that are fully stocked by community organizations in these areas that have Narcan. Down in Florida, we work with an organization called SFOA that provides naloxone free of charge as well. We always highlight where the nearest vending machine or porch box is for the presentation that we're doing. The presentation at this medication, naloxone, is also available over the counter now, but it costs about $50 to $60. So if kids want to find where free naloxone is, we encourage them to go to narcannow.us. It's a website that we started putting together just to highlight where people can find free naloxone or Narcan. Because if it's free in your area or your state, it sounds like, there might be a policy issue there in Missouri, which I'll look more into. And they're not alone. I mean, there are other states like this as well, which is sad. But, there are other ways to get Narcan in communities that we like to highlight. And then also, we always highlight the local community coalition. These are usually federally funded or receive some community support to provide trainings or naloxone to communities. And they also do education in schools and work with kids. So we always highlight the local coalitions. Also through our organization, we partner with Victoria's Voice that provide these Victoria Voice diaries. It's an 18-year-old girl, Victoria Siegel, lost her life to a drug overdose when she was just 18 years old. She struggled with mental health and substance use, and her friends and family knew nothing about it. She wrote about it in her diary. She gave her parents permission to publish her diary if anything did happen to her. And she talks about her struggles with substances and with mental health in her own words, in her own handwriting that kids can actually pick up and read. And it also provides a lot of drug prevention, education things at the end of the book, which are really great for educators. We encourage kids to start a SAFE chapter by going to Instagram at Fentanyl Safe and connecting with students who essentially educate on the uses of naloxone, the dangers of fentanyl and counterfeit pills, and how to appropriately respond to a drug overdose. They have school clubs and events that they do together, and they have lesson plans, and they can kind of walk students through how to set up their own club at their own school. We also have 1001 Great Comebacks to Peer Pressure, another resource at the bottom of our website, available to students. We also share with the schools that we are going to ship in boxes of Victoria's Voice Foundation, Victoria's Diaries, in any area. All we need is like the principal's name, and we'll send them 100 books to just give away to kids. And we say he encourages kids to go down to the counselor's office, talk about what they may be going through, and it can spark up some important discussions after the assembly. It's also just a resource that kids are really interested in. And we also have a 9-lesson plan curriculum that is a classroom-based curriculum that we just came out with in conjunction with Victoria's Voice, called Fentanyl, Fake, and Fatal. 9 lesson plans that we provide free to the schools as well that participate with our program. And it also addresses schools who say, we're not interested in a one and done presentation. Okay, well, we're not one and done. We have like lesson plans after. We want to continue working with you. We want to start SAFE chapters, have kids continue talking about the subject because it's super important. Mike usually closes out our presentations with his call to action in his testimony of his son, Brian. He does his testimony a little bit differently than mine. I do who Drew was, what he was like, what happened, and then what I wish or what I want to leave with the student audiences, like a call to action. Mike highlights two important stories about Brian. One, how he made people feel. So a story that highlights his interaction with a girl who came up to Mike at Brian's memorial service, just saying that Brian was stayed up on the phone with her 3 hours. She wishes that she could save him. But the way that he made people feel, I think, in the world. And then also he has this great story about Brian's kind of invincibility from, I guess he lost a friend to fentanyl shortly before he actually passed away, and just told his parents that, this would never happen to him because he's Superman. And then Mike goes into, nobody is Superman. Nobody is immune from this drug. And, after that, he says, talked a lot about our stories, ways that we can help you, resources that are available. But now I want to turn attention to your parents, people who weren't able to attend this assembly presentation. Please share what you've learned, share it with them, be the hero at the next party that you're at. When you see friends passing around pills or experimenting with different substances, share what you've learned today. Tell them about fentanyl. Tell them about the risks of misusing medications or substances, because then ultimately you could be the solution for saving a life, which is a great full circle way of wrapping it up and call to action for the kids as we're closing out the assembly. We end every assembly by asking the kids to repeat after us the I'll never try, so I'll never die from fentanyl. And we asked them to complete the post survey that they started that pre-survey at the beginning of their presentation. So sometime during their lunch period or sometime during the day to complete that post survey. We usually get about a 10% response, just voluntary on the surveys. And we've collected over 11,000 survey respondents since 2023. So which is really great. This goes into more, I would say that scare tactics is a buzzword for schools. So the DARE program is no more because it was proven to be ineffective. It was actually proven to have the opposite effect on drug use among adolescent populations. Drug use went up instead of down through using scare tactics was the overarching conclusion of this 10-year analysis of the DARE program. So there are no more DARE in schools, and schools are very, very hesitant to bring in any sensitive topic because they're really worried about scare tactics. I always say, we use storytelling, not scare tactics. We're telling our real testimonies, and we're combining that with education, which is an evidence-based way of bringing sensitive topics and discussing them in schools. I mean, one, high school and middle schoolers have a high BS meter, so they'll know if you're bullshitting from the get-go. They also respect vulnerability over really anything else. I mean, you don't have to be an influencer or someone famous to really capture their attention, but if you show that you can be vulnerable and that you're spewing facts and truth to them, then you'll have their attention much better than trying to scare them. They see kind of right through that. So we don't try and do that. This is an evidence-based way of bringing drug prevention to schools as well. So this just talks about, the differences. Fentanyl Fake and Fatal is our classroom curriculum I was talking about. I already kind of went through that recommended format for testimonies. I'll be sending out the testimonial worksheet to you all after this meeting. And, another recommended format. So this is what I use, what were they like, what happened, to look back, and then what is our ask that I use for my my testimony. Bob does a really great job of kind of going through that as well. Another option is like, here's a challenge that I face with, losing my brother. Here's a challenge that we face as society with fentanyl poisoning and the opioid epidemic, losing countless Americans. And then here's a challenge that you face as far as, just the drug landscape, the dangers of counterfeit pills, the uncertainty of even experimenting with substances today, and then talking about your loved one fit into those format options. I'll provide this as a PDF for everybody after the presentation. Actually, I'll probably get it out either Sunday night or Monday to you all with all of the resources following this training along with the certificate. I have a few examples in here, but we kind of went long on the first one. This is Arthur kind of going through the who they were, talking about his son Chance, which I don't think, I want to leave time for questions and don't want to hold you guys after. So I want to be respectful for that. So I guess right now, just some learning successes and pitfalls of doing this presentation is I like to avoid updating the presentation too much, other than updating things that for different areas, like the Good Samaritan Law, the local resource highlights and things, just because I'm very protective of program fidelity. So just making sure that there's consistency across areas, so that we're measuring as effectively as we can, knowing that, the presentation is being presented the way that covers all the topics that we want to cover to create that evidence base with the program. So we don't, and it's also easier as we're doing more presentations in different areas to just change like testimonial slides and still cover the curriculum effectively. So we don't make tons of changes, but we do update like numbers and things. And anything relevant for certain areas, like in Pennsylvania, xylazine came out of Philadelphia. Xylazine's, an emerging public health threat, has been for the last couple of years. So that's something that we talk about in that presentation as well. But it's also, we see it here as well. But we don't talk about it. But different topics that might be needed to be discussed in the future are definitely updates that we're also discussing, kind of broadening some of the presentation topics as well. We always load the presentation onto a USB drive, and when it's loaded on the USB drive, then we just show up to the school. We always ask the school to provide their own laptop. I'll always bring my own laptop and a Bluetooth speaker or something, and my own power source and my own HDMI cable and all that stuff. But we don't expect this to be the case for everybody. I just like to be prepared. But a lot of times the schools, we check ahead of time, do you have all this stuff? And in Mike's templated communications, we ask, you guys have all of this and you have PowerPoint on your computer, so that when we go to the school, we can just plug in our USB to their computer and then drop the PowerPoint file onto their desktop and play the presentation from there. The embedded files, it's a huge file, so I can't just email it to the school. It's like 3 gigabytes. But we arrive an hour early to do sound check, video check, and then make sure that all the video files are working. We don't use YouTube files because we don't like to rely on internet. We want everything a hard copy so that we don't have any lags during the presentation, because it is very tight. And then I already talked about your audience, or the high school and middle school audiences. They really reward and appreciate authenticity and vulnerability more than anything else. So I'll leave it there and open it for questions. If anybody has questions, that was lengthy, and I appreciate
I mean, who can pay attention 2 hours on a Saturday? Crying out loud! You guys are dedicated. I just want to say, Michael, in New York, like we have this New York specific video that Ludmila's classmates did. Jack said he likes the fidelity of the program, and he doesn't. I have a really big library of ancillary or other material, including cartoons and all sorts of stuff. And there's bells and whistles that you can put out there to be interesting, shiny object. But ultimately, you got to play ball within the clock, and the clock expires in 45 minutes. And you got to get this information out. Your testimony is the most important. There's an emotive movie that we have in it, and we do have some really award-winning PSAs. One that we don't bring to many schools called Russian Roulette, loading a gun with Adderall pills. That one is half the states don't want, but it won an award. And then our opening one is 279 Dying a Day. It's really, air quote, sexy video because it's so mesmerizing and heart-pounding when it starts out. But it's basically a time thing. You got to pick and choose. I think I've got 2 hours of leftover material.
Yeah, and when schools are booking too, sometimes they've seen one version of the program already, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we want to bring that to my school." And then if we just completely change the content to something different, they're like, "What the heck is this?" So that's another thing we don't want to run into too much. Jackie, you had a question?
Yeah, and thank you for stating that the wait till the end, because I often find once I wait until the complete presentation or speakers are done, most of those questions are answered. So I just wanted to kind of echo what Laura Woody was saying and her challenges in her area, because here we don't have the challenge against Narcan. But we do have a challenge with harm reduction. Mm-hmm. And I think it stated earlier because of people feel like you're competing for funding or whatever instead of just education. So I engaged in some of those conversations instead of saying, I didn't want to be combative. I just said, I would love to join you in that, because when Laura stated she had mentioned the Perryville teens here, and that having Narcan in the hands of the younger generation who are non-addicts is just as important as these harm reduction sites who have Narcan, because it really is addict-based, right? Mm-hmm. These are addicts going into these harm reduction places. So we just, I said I'd love to expand that into the hands of others that are non-addicts, because people don't see them as a risk, and they're high risk. Because they don't even understand that one pill can kill. So kind of wanted to echo that. So here in Baltimore or Maryland, they do have Narcan vending machines. So we may want to mention that. I don't know if that's something we can add in. Mm-hmm. You can Google Narcan machines, vending machines near me. So that gives them access to that, because it is cost when you go into a drugstore to get them. The other question was, I saw that in, I guess it was Amber Johnson, when she did her speaking, you had the Lost Voices of Fentanyl teen banners. Could they be made available?
We did. That was great. April Babcock generously sent those. We have the large ones too that take up wall size.
And kids all come up and look at those too.
April also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. But April
also has a lookbook. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, I haven't seen that. But April said, hey, you talk to teenagers. I've got teenage banners. I'm like, what's the question? Yeah, send them. So she sent them, and we put them at the bottom of our assemblies, particularly if we have media there. And they always pan those things. It gets kids to come up afterwards and look at all the faces of the young people. The person with an experience is never at mercy of someone with an argument. You can't argue with all these kids that passed away. So it's very effective. It'd be very costly to do it for every single speaker out there, but it's a great method. It's also hard to carry these things around. That's why when we give out this book, we don't carry the boxes of Victoria Voice. We ship it to the school afterward, and they love it. And we show the girls that, hey, check this out. It's written by Victoria herself. It's her own handwriting type of thing, you know. And they eat that up. This one
Mike,
is all.
you had a question?
This one's signed by the Siegel family.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we did our speech at Farrell, the representative from the district attorney's office, she had brought a plethora of resources with her, including, Narcan, giving Narcan out to the kids after the speech, and also testing kits. I don't know if that's something that, you guys are okay with doing, but
half the communities are into it. It's called harm reduction. We got a great group that gives away, the truth about drugs. There's a whole kit, and we have resources like that. The harm reduction. Go ahead, Jack.
We don't give out fentanyl testing strips at our presentations or Narcan. In some states, schools don't allow. There's one school that actually allows us to give it to their seniors prior to prom in Michigan, but otherwise, we just tell the kids, you can go to any of these sites and take as much Narcan as you want for free. And we tell them, and schools are fine with that. But we're not allowed to actually direct distribute. If you get approval from a school, that's awesome. I mean, that's like a home run. And the fentanyl testing strips, if kids are going to use substances or are using substances, which about 5 to 6% of kids that attend our presentations are actively using substances, then fentanyl test strips is something that they I would hope are using or are knowledgeable about, but it's not something that we just try not to get too intermingled in the harm reduction space with our presentation, because it's also off-putting to schools a lot of times when you're trying to just get this information out there. We just want to, it's one less barrier to address, like getting a stamp of approval for talking about fentanyl testing strips.
And we're just trying to remove the ignorant deaths, that happen. These kids don't even know. Our main message is, you take something unprescribed, you buy an illicit drug on the street, your odds of running into fentanyl are really way too high. Yeah. It's not your grandfather's Woodstock weed anymore type of thing.
Right. I'm not a big fan of the testing strips myself.
Yeah.
Or some of the other harm reduction.
Yeah, they're very off-putting.
Yeah. Well, and it's not a guaranteed thing,
Yeah, the chocolate chip effect.
Exactly. With counterfeit pills, you have to completely crush that pill. You have to test all of it, and then then you can drink it or whatever. People just aren't going to go through the steps. You can't test half of it.
But Michael, you might have a coalition that's part of their gig, and that's fine. You have a coalition. Right. There's a resource. We're not a stick in the mud here. We want to do what's practical to move it forward. You got a free resource. We always hook up with the local coalition. We'll be talking about that in New York, because I sent you an email already. I hope you got it.
Bob had something quick to. Bob, you had your hand raised, so I want to respect that.
Oh, you answered it with the, I did ask if he had, sometimes in presentations, there's, in presentation mode, PowerPoint, there's speaker notes, and Jack had such good talking points, and I've been to a lot of these, a dozen, and each speaker brings a really good point that conveys the message to the slide, and sometimes having those speaker points in the slide that I'm used to in PowerPoint presentation are great to have those wonderful comments in the speaker notes to look ahead of time. So when you get to that slide, you can throw that point out there and really make it hit home to the kids.
Yeah. I will say that in the making of the presentation, we do have some of those notes on some of the slides, especially like our partners at the Alliance. They created a lot of speaker notes. It's not something that I use a whole lot, but it can be added. And I think that would be a good idea, especially if we're sending it out to different areas. Definitely a good idea to do.
Bob Kiesling, I just want to point out, is a great man of faith, because he's an upbeat guy, and he lost 2 boys on the same night. And the last time he talked about that, he got a little emotional, but that's...
We cry, man. Yeah.
Kids pay attention to that.
We all... It started speaking, I would say kind of around the same time in front of school audiences, but it's cool seeing each speaker just get better and better. I think the more that they do as well. Like Bob's last testimony, I feel like just was like great.
It was a home run. And
yeah.
to Mike Gillette's
is
point, when he says, "My name's Mike Gillette," and on X date, and the kids put their cell phones down, we do a preamble. Like, I'll start out and say, "Okay, we're going to start," and the principal will hand the mic off. All I say is, "I'm here on a sad mission," and they look up. They're like, "What, freak?" You know what they're thinking. I'll say, "I lost my son to this." When I say I lost my son to this, that's it. They're dead silent. And I tell the principal, you do not need to talk in a parent's voice to these kids and tell them to be respectful and put their phones away. They'll do it automatically, and they always do. Doesn't matter if you're in the hood or you're in some private school. They all act the same way, respectful. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think that the point to make is, when you're up there, you said earlier, the kids respond to authenticity, vulnerability, and sometimes you get distance from this. Is for me, anyways, remembering certain moments that kind of bare my heart a bit. Right? I don't want to be up there slobbering, but I want to bare my heart to share that so the kids can see it, and that's what makes these. And I see that every time Mike Gillette gets up there, and I get to see when he sits down afterwards. He's trembling a bit. He's shooken because he's emotionally there, and I think the kids see that realness. Anyhow,
yeah.
Want to recognize Sheila McCorkle from South Carolina. Hasn't said a word. Good to see you, Sheila.
Good to see you.
Thank you guys all for hopping on. And like I said, I'm going to be sending out everybody who was on this call. I think I have everybody's emails except for Laura. I don't know if you could share your email in the chats, but I'll be sending out all the PowerPoint presentations, the PDF versions of those, and then the testimonial worksheet, which just breaks down those recommended formats for telling a personal testimony in one of our presentations. And then the email templates that Mike covered during the first hour, as well as a certificate of completion for the attending today's training. So, thank you all. And I will have that to you probably tomorrow or Monday. Today I'm driving across the states to go play in a pickleball tournament. That's where I'm headed now.
Yeah, Jack is the national champion in doubles of the United States with mixed doubles.
Yes.
So he's got a new life. I'm really happy for him.
It's a good hobby for me.
You gotta let us know when you're playing local, Jack, so we can come out and support you.
I'm so proud my son's a professional athlete. I just kind of mumble the pickleball part when I'm bragging about it at the cocktail parties.
That's a high skill sport. Get out of here, Greg.
He still hasn't seen me play.
I watched last night, dude, and I sent you a screenshot of it.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna send you guys. I videotaped this thing. It was an hour. And, we have one really professionally edited version of our presentation that we did from 2023. There's one at fentelfathers.org/MI. You'll see the whole presentation done cohesively. And then you have the notes, the behind the scenes today. So you should have a pretty good idea. I can tell you that I'm sure you present the stuff great. Your testimony is the key. You're flipping through slides. You have a familiarity with them. But the rubber meets the road when you book schools. And Michael, who joined us today, you know how tough that was to do it. You did it at alma mater of your brother. It's not easy. It's not an easy business. But if you do it, you separate yourselves and you become really professional and you really have an impact. I just want to tell you, booking schools is the difference maker here. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to sign off, and we're right at 1 hour for this. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Trish, for coming. You and I and Jack are going to do dinner soon. All right. Talk to you guys later. Thanks. Bye-bye.